I do want to get back, though, to this notion of, okay, the CEO, the commissioner, has one incentive or set of incentives around who he would like to be one of the owners of this artwork, one of these teams, this exclusive club. And the other owners also have incentives. And so the question I have is there such a thing as an owner who wants to buy a team, a potential owner, who is too rich? Speaking to the other way that this specific enterprise, sports, is different, right? They're competing. They're actively competing around what they're paying their employees. And is there such a thing as an owner who is then too rich?
So that's very funny because we had that exact debate. And the answer was there used to be until the valuations got into the multi-billions. So Steve Cohen was not a candidate to buy the Mets because there was a concern by the Yankees and more than 7 other teams, and that's enough to block a vote. The concern was that he will raise payrolls, pay players, and that will make us look bad. When Jeff Morad, a player agent, tried to buy a team, he was not allowed to. We voted against it because we thought he was an agent, that we thought that he would be too good to the players, that he would be too loyal to the players. Therefore, he did not get 23 votes and could not be in the club. But Steve Cohen then says, all right, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to pay the Wilpons $2.4 billion. Hold on, 2.4. Okay, you're in. So there's
because they care more about the asset value.
Because it in theory, what it was supposed to do is make every team worth more. But what we found with the Orioles transaction, which was just announced this week,
and here we are at that story.
It actually has not increased the value of franchises in the way that was supposed to happen when the Mets were sold at 2.4. And so the 1.7 for the Orioles is a negative for the commissioner and the other owners, and I'm sure they're quite disappointed about it, actually.
$1.73 billion to this new ownership group feels like a disappointment to David. John, do you have a knee-jerk reaction to that number feeling disappointing?
I don't see it as much of a problem as David does. He knows more about this subject than I do. But if you look at the Mets 2.4 in New York City, Baltimore 1.7 in Baltimore, I mean, there's a significant difference in market there. The Orioles have had problems as a smaller market team competing in the.
What's the euphemism, David, you guys liked for a small market?
Low revenue.
There it is.
Low revenue. I mean, it's been, and by the way, they have had a very advantageous situation with the regional rights through Masson because they control it. They get 75% of the rights fee.
Shared with the Nationals.
By the way, I do remember a year in which the Orioles were the lowest rated team in the major league in terms of their regional network. I think they were getting about 30,000 views per game.
Oh, we were well below that. We were always below that.
You were below
30,000.
So you were always below that, so they weren't.
They never finished 30.
Perhaps maybe what I'm thinking is they were relative to the money. The money per viewer was higher than any other.
Oh, it was unbelievable.
They were getting
That's like cost per win for Tampa.
Yes.
You get to celebrate.
I was like, why isn't David so ashamed by this? Oh, it's because
very.
he actually had a percentage justification for why it's not actually as
No,
embarrassing.
the reason I'm not ashamed is that we were able to sell the team at 1.2. And if you think about that 7 years ago,
there it is.
It turns out that the value of the team is not based on. So I don't know if you know any of the buyers, but they're venture capitalists, private equity guys, and one of them is 74.
You're talking about the Orioles.
The new Orioles, the new limited partners. They actually don't run the Orioles. They're buying a limited partnership share where they have the ability to buy the rest once Peter Angelos passes away. But I promise you, when they were evaluating this deal, they didn't look to the ratings on Masson and how many people were watching the games. It doesn't even go into your financial model.
I was suggesting, though, that the money they were getting from Masson is going to decline.
Yes,
Masson is probably not. I don't see how it exists 3 years from now.
And it used to be an asset of the Angelos family, and it still is an asset. That part of this deal is that they're not selling their their rights to Masson. So interestingly, Rubenstein is going to have a deal with a network owned by the previous owner and the previous owner's sons, in large part. And the bigger issue is, what value do you assign to these deals now? And so when a private equity guy is valuing a deal, they do numbers and projections, and he used to really put in pen what the TV revenue would be, and now it's in pencil. Right. And that changes how you value a team, and I think that's what's hurt Rob the most as commissioner, and the reason why franchises have not gone up the way Adams gotten them or Rodgers gotten them in the NFL is because the broadcast revenue is so questionable in its sort of, you can't make it actual.
Well, it's the league with the biggest problem around the regional network collapse, right? They had the largest percentage of money. I think the National Hockey League has a similar problem. It's just
smaller.
And so the question here, David, for a seller of a team, how do you maximize your market given the pencil that everything is being written in?
You have to build competition. The way we maximize is having multiple people who want to buy it, and therefore making the ego premium larger. But you look at teams like the Los Angeles Angels, Artie Moreno's been trying to sell. Mark Lerner with the Nationals, they've been trying to sell. The Angelos boys have been trying to sell. And it's hard because people have a view that, the Marlins were at 1.2, we should be at $2 billion or 2.4, and they're not.
But aren't they also disadvantaged? They want to do this deal now, right, for estate planning purposes. So you're having the leisure, as Mr. Moreno did, right? He decided not to sell his team because the collapse of the regional sports networks is depressing prices. I'm assuming they've made the decision that $1.7 billion is enough for the next generation to live on, probably. But it's
not been a great investment.
Okay,
well,
let's
you'll
talk
explain
about
why.
Yeah, let's talk
for
about
They've
the average
lost money on an annual basis. When we looked at the pro formas in 1993, and I looked at them from the side because I was not involved in the deal, but I got to see what work the bankers had done for Jeffrey. The profitability of that team was de minimis, and those were at low payrolls and sold-out stadiums. Now the Orioles don't draw, and while their national revenue's gone up, the local revenue has not.
So let's lay out the outsider interpretation of what it means when in 1993 you pay $173 million for the Baltimore Orioles, and now you sell this thing at just $1 billion and some change, which seems like the dream. But David Sampson is here to tell you that you misunderstand what about that basic math.
Well, if you have $173 million, and it wasn't exactly 173, that was the enterprise value in 1993. You take out the debt, and there's other sorts of things. But let's just assume that it's $173 million, and you deposit that in a stock account, even in a fixed income. You could do fixed income and a stock, but there's a saying, you double your money every 7 years. In a reasonable investment return, which is where we've been over the course of, if you look over the past, call it almost 100 years.
Of the stock market.
Or I could say also it's been rough recently in fixed income, but it's fixed income as well. Double your money every 7 years. So take 170 in 1993, you're up to 340 by Y2K. Right. Then invest 340 in 2000. By 2007, you're at 680. By 2014, you're at $1.3 billion. By 2021, you're at 2.6. So if Angelos had skipped being an owner, that 173 would be over $2.5 billion today.
By sheer compound interest.
Just by sitting there and doing nothing. Now, you don't get to go to owners' meetings. You don't get to sit in the
ego
dugout.
Premium, not there.
Nothing like that. But from an ROI standpoint, a 30-second story is that when Jeff Cohen was traded to the Marlins, Peter Angelos had his GM say to us that Jeff Cohen's my favorite player, and we will not trade him to you unless you give us another player. Jeff Cohen, when traded to the Marlins, told me he had never met Peter Angelos.
But there was a Cohen premium.
So Peter Angelos, in theory, was not the type of owner who was jock sniffing, not the type of owner who would take such a big ego premium. While he has dementia now and is not with it and hasn't been for a long time, I don't believe that he would approve of $1.7 billion for his team in 2023.
I think the number's that big for the average person. They just go, wow, if you just got $1.7 billion and you only paid $173 million, you just did great. If you think of it in terms of a real person who has $17,300 in the bank in 1993 and is 25 years old and wanting to to have that money work for their retirement. That would be a return. If you do the math, I guess you have 17.3. You'd have $173 million.
17 turns to 34, 34 to 68, 68 to 120, 120 to 240.
No, I was doing something different. Just if you had put $17,300 in a savings account, invested it to pay for your kids' colleges, and you had, how many years later? Almost 30 years later, you had what amounts to $173,000, give or take, right?
But they could have had 240 if they had invested it better. But yes,
you would be disappointed. But nobody is disappointed because of the size of $1.7 billion.
I take issue with that because you shouldn't be disappointed if you put $17,000 away. The problem we have, and this is a societal issue, people have a hard time saving, but even saving $1 per paycheck. I don't know if you encourage your employees to do it, but that's what 401ks are. And that's anytime you can put money into savings and put it to work for you, it's going to benefit you.
I'm going to go around to all the employees here at Meadowlark today and ask them to take $1 from their check and give it to me. And if you put all this $1 together and I invest it.
Yeah, it's just fiduciary prima nocta, I believe.
Yeah.
You just get
fiduciary
a claim.
prima nocta.
You can mock
This
me,
is
John, but
Braveheart,
having people save money,
gross reference.
No,
it's
I'm
something that
for
is
that.
very important.
By the way,
What I'm slightly mocking is the idea that I should have any concerns about Peter Angelos should have spent his money better and have more than $1 billion.
Concerned. I'm merely saying that people telling you that it's the greatest investment the guy ever made is a genius. I don't view that as a genius investment. He may have loved being an owner, but he actually didn't. There's certain owners who do.
Right. You're saying that even with all the caveats appended of antitrust exemptions and all of the stuff that the civic, this is a whole other rabbit hole, but the civic benefits that accrue to owning a sports team, you're saying that from a pure financial perspective, if you put that money in the market, you come out with something comparable.
Or better in the Baltimore situation.
This is why I refer to this show as Rich Guy Only Fans, by the way. I hope people out there enjoyed listening to John and David do math because it's actually relevant to how it is that we think about the values of all of this. Rich Guys Only Fans. How do rich guys think about stuff? So before we...
I take issue with that characterization.
Before we... Rich Guys Only Enemies for David, perhaps.